Man, I love sports. Sports just have a way of getting me pumped up. And last night was awesome because Courtney and I were right here in our living room on this TV screen watching the 2016 matchup between the Ohio State University and that team up north that will remain unnamed. What we watched was a double overtime game. It was so good to have sports back in my life. I mean, I don't know about you, but I miss sports so much. And as we watched this game, we got to this pivotal moment. If you've seen the game before, you know what happens. Ohio State had the ball 4th and 1. They had 1 yard to get. If they didn't get it, they were going to lose the game. If they got it, they'd have a chance to win the game. JT Barrett, the quarterback, kind of faked like he was going to hand the ball off to the right. He runs a little bit to the left. He gets tackled right at the line. It's so close. It's hard to tell if he made it or not, but the referees made the right call. They said it was a first down. After they reviewed it, they affirmed that was the right call, and guess what? The Buckeyes won the game on the very next play. It was an awesome game. I loved having football back in my house. It was so good. But one of my favorite things is after the game, the coach of that team up north, Jim Harbaugh, he has a quote that just sticks out to me. Even though it was so close, it was really hard to tell if our quarterback made it or not. Their coach went like this, and he was this short. And then here's the quote. He said, "I am bitterly disappointed by the officiating crew." Bitterly disappointed. I mean, I just love that quote because I love Ohio State and I'm not a big fan of that team up north. But, the truth is we all run into disappointment in life. Disappointment is a universal thing. Everyone deals with it. And right now we're all facing some disappointment, I'm sure. I mean, I think especially of the class of 2020, you guys are dealing with the end of your high school career that you've worked so hard for. You've made it this far, and things aren't looking anything like you expect. I mean, that leads to a lot of disappointment. No matter who you are as a student, even though you enjoyed the thought of not going to school maybe at first, at this point, you're missing your friends, you're missing that regular time to be around them and to even be in the classroom. Maybe you're missing out on sports. If you had a season that came to a quick end, or maybe a season that never began, you're dealing with that disappointment. And here's what I want you to know as we talk about this idea of disappointment, and we're going to rally around that idea. Here's what I want you to know. It is okay to be disappointed. There's nothing wrong with feeling disappointed. In fact, if you feel disappointed, it's totally normal. That is okay. It's not wrong at all to feel disappointed. The question is, what are you going to do with it once you begin to feel disappointed? What are you going to do with that feeling? No feeling is right or wrong on its own. It's just how we react to things. It's really, what do you do with the feelings? And here's what I want to talk about: how to deal with disappointment. Because if you don't deal with disappointment, it can be very dangerous. Disappointment can actually destroy your faith if it's not dealt with. In fact, here's the pattern that we usually run into. You and I have an expectation in life. Imagine, if you're a senior in high school, you had an expectation about your senior season of sports, the end of your senior year, senior prank, your senior yearbook, your senior prom, and then ultimately your graduation ceremony. Those are your expectations, and now those expectations are unmet. Unmet expectations always lead to disappointment. It doesn't just come up if you're a senior in high school. No matter what, imagine you expect your friend to do something for you and they don't do it. How are you going to feel? You're going to feel disappointed. So here's the pattern. Unmet expectations lead to disappointment, the feeling of disappointment. If you don't deal with your disappointment, then that leads to discouragement. You begin to get discouraged when you live in disappointment. And ultimately, when you are discouraged, you begin to believe that you're defeated, that you have no hope, that everything's over, that there's no chance of things getting any better. Disappointment leads to discouragement, which leads to defeat. Today, I want to encourage you to deal with your disappointment in a different way. Because here's the truth. You are not defeated. You're not defeated. You're not a victim. You're actually a victor. I love the words of Jesus, John 16:33. He's speaking to his followers, and he makes it clear to them that if you're a follower of Jesus, your life is going to be difficult. You're going to run into difficult things in life. Here's what he says. I have told you these things so that in me you have peace. And here's something crazy. Who knew God would say this? He says, in this world you will have trouble. He guarantees it. Hey, following Jesus is not a get out of jail free card to make life just easy. No, not the truth. Jesus actually promises you will have trouble. But here's the promise on the other side. He says, take heart, because I have overcome the world. Jesus says, you will have trouble, but it doesn't have to overcome you because he's overcome the world. You don't have to be defeated when you're disappointed because Jesus has overcome. But then I love the words of Romans 8. If you look at what is said here about, in Romans 8, 35, 36, talks about all of these troubles and hardships that we can face. Verse 37 says this, says, no, in all of these things we are more than conquerors through him who loves us. See, we are not defeated because Jesus has overcome the world, and through Jesus, we actually can overcome too. We're not victims, we're conquerors. Anything that life throws at us, we are able to make it through. We're able to step through it because of our faith in Jesus and the perspective that that brings. And so here's a perspective shift for you. Don't view your disappointment as a dead end. View it as an open door. Don't view it as the end of the story. View it as something that you're going to walk through and journey through to get to what God actually has for you. Romans 8:28, you might know the verse. It says, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. The good, the bad, and the ugly. No matter what you're going through, it's something that God is able to work for good. And so I wonder, what is the thing that God wants to use in this season for your good? It might look like disappointment now, but it's actually an open door to God's plan for your life. Here's some action steps for you if you want to put this sort of teaching into practice. First, I want you to take some time today and I want you to name it. Name it. What do I mean by that? I want you to list out on a piece of paper or your notes app all of the things that are disappointing you right now. Go ahead and name it. List out what's disappointing you. High school graduation canceled. I'm not going back to school. My senior season. Go on, go on, go on. What are the things that are disappointing you? I want you to name it. List out all of those things. And then I want you to claim it. What do I mean by claim it? I want you to claim that promise from God that you are not defeated by those things. That those things are not overcoming you because Jesus has overcome the world. That you're actually more than a conqueror in the face of those disappointments, and that God's going to work them for good. So I want you to name it, name the disappointment, and then I want you to claim it. Claim the promise of God over those things, that he's working it for good, that he still loves you, that he still has a plan. The best way to do that is through prayer. List those things out, and then just talk to God about them. Say, God, I'm disappointed about this. I'm hurting about this, but I believe your promise. I'm claiming your promise for my life that you're going to work this for good. God, help me to see how you're bringing this all for good. And if you do that, you don't have to live bitterly disappointed. You don't have to be defeated. Instead, you can be more than a conqueror through Christ. That's who you are.